homage to Shakyamuni Buddha, Manjushri of wisdom and courage, homage to kind root masters. The profound Dharma is rarely encountered even in 100,000 eons. See, here uphold realized Tathagata meaning. To liberate all sentient beings, give rise to the supreme bodhicitta. Next, we will discuss the words of my perfect teacher. We are now studying the rules for listening to the Dharma. Previously, we have already learned about the 3 faults. Today, we will now begin discussing the 6 stains in detail. During the process of listening to the Dharma, there are 6 stains that must be eliminated. As for what is meant by stains, as you probably already know, everyone is already, of course, quite well aware. For example, when eating, if your bowl is not entirely clean or spotless, and there are many tiny specks of dust, as well as various other small impurities and contaminating particles present on it, because of this, it cannot be used. The same goes for any kind of container. It cannot be used either. If you use it anyway, then for you, it will be harmful to your health and your body and mind. In the same way, when it comes to being a vessel for listening to the Dharma, you should thoroughly examine mind stream. First, as we discussed earlier, as mentioned before, you are absolutely not allowed to have the 3 faults. Then, these 6 stains must also be purified. Nowadays, some people listening to the Dharma are unaware that their own mind streams are actually filled with stains. But on the surface, they just put on an act of listening. As a result, the Dharma they hear is very difficult to truly take root in their hearts. This is also because you are not skillful in the methods of listening to the Dharma. Therefore, as a listener of the Dharma, you should actually, with sincere and attentive mindfulness, very carefully examine yourself. Ordinary people, indeed, often, when they carefully observe their own minds, will definitely find these stains. Because ordinary people have all sorts of faults, and in terms of virtues, ordinary people possess very few. Moreover, even the virtues they do have are often incomplete. That's just how it is. Therefore, when we listen to the Dharma, we should frequently and mindfully reflect on our own minds with sincerity and openness. Here, the 6 kinds of stains will be explained below. According to Master Vasubandhu's Vyakya Yukti, it states, arrogance, lack of right faith, lack of aspiration for the Dharma, outward distraction, inward withdrawal, and during the process of listening to the Buddha's teachings, there are these 6 kinds of stains. Now, below, each of them will be thoroughly explained one by one. It is absolutely essential to eliminate these 6 kinds of stains. To begin, I would like to take a moment to briefly summarize the main points we will be discussing. This summary is meant to provide a clear overview. The first is arrogance. Arrogance means being full of conceit. It is thinking in your mind that you are already, by your own estimation, far superior to the Dharma teacher. This is indeed arrogance. The second is a lack of faith, which essentially means having not even the slightest bit of faith in the teacher or in the Dharma. Some people even develop wrong views, which is also a major stain. This will not allow the Dharma to benefit your mind stream. The third is lack of aspiration. In other words, meaning having no desire or enthusiasm to seek the authentic Dharma. Listening or not listening is fine. With an indifferent attitude like that. The fourth, during the process of listening to the teachings, is what is called distraction. Specifically, this means your mind is distracted, wandering outward to the 6 sense objects, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and so on, all the things you can perceive. The fifth is called withdrawal inward, meaning the 5 sense faculties turn inward. You keep experiencing a persistent state of dullness, or sometimes even a feeling of sleepiness that seems to linger and gradually affects your ability to stay fully alert and engage with your surroundings. This is also often a major obstacle when listening to the Dharma. The 6th stain is fatigue, which refers to tiredness, meaning while the Dharma teacher is giving the teaching, you feel especially tired. Too much time has passed. And sometimes the reason you start to feel bored is simply because you don't have enough energy, making it difficult to stay interested or engaged in what you're doing. I have just given a brief explanation to introduce the main ideas and provide an initial overview. In the next part, I will take the time to explain each point more thoroughly, going into greater. Everyone, observe your own mind stream. The words of my perfect teacher is actually written in very simple and easy to understand language, and the Tibetan is the same way. When I translated it into Chinese, I also tried my best to make it understandable for everyone, turning it into plain language, so that in the future, when it comes to the text, basically, as long as you have an elementary school level of education, you should be able to understand it fairly well. However, in terms of its meaning, it is profound. It's not enough to simply be able to explain it literally. You need to compare each point with your own mind stream to see which aspects you can accomplish and which you cannot. For the things you can do, you should keep working hard and continue to improve. For the parts you really can't do, you should do everything you can and give it your all. Gradually get rid of the bad habits, negative tendencies, and defilements that you originally had in your mind and behavior, and transform yourself into a good mindset, a pure heart. This is the direction that every practitioner should strive toward. Now, the first one below is arrogance. So-called arrogance among all the afflictions. Arrogance and jealousy are arguably the hardest to recognize or even identify in ourselves. This is also clearly stated in the Abhidharma Kosha as well. There are also such discussions in the Mahayana Abhidharma. Among all the afflictions, such as greed and anger, as well as ordinary delusion, which refers to the common misunderstandings and misconceptions that cloud our perception of reality, and other latent afflictions, such as subtle mental disturbances, hidden emotional biases, and underlying tendencies that remain dormant within the mind, arrogance and jealousy are often very difficult to recognize and understand. For example, when anger arises in your mind stream, others can tell this person is losing their temper today. They are feeling angry. You yourself can also clearly feel it. You feel uncomfortable inside. You immediately think to yourself, I'm being such a bad person. Look, my mindset is off once again. You develop a very intense and frightening anger toward a certain Dharma friend. You recognize it right away. If greed arises in our mind stream, we also notice it immediately. I develop a strong attachment to a certain person, or I become attached to a certain thing, and I can sense it right away myself. Others can also quite clearly see it from his words and actions. It's easy to recognize in our own mind stream if there is extreme delusion, such as a very serious state of confusion, or perhaps a situation where reality becomes unclear. It will immediately show in your body and mind. You get drowsy, sluggish, and muddled. Anyone can see it at a glance, just like me today, right? You know, there's just a bit of a dazed state. I can see from your eyes, you notice I'm in a confused state right now. It's just a kind of muddled state, and many people feel dissatisfied with me. Others can quite clearly see it, and I myself actually really feel as if today's lecture, for some reason, is just not going well at all. You know, that's just how it feels. You can tell right away. But jealousy and arrogance are not so easy to notice. Others can't tell if someone has arrogance. Sometimes it seems a bit arrogant, and sometimes it's not like that. It's the same with jealousy. Even you yourself can't feel it. But actually, it's constantly arising in your mind. Every now and then I start to feel a sense of jealousy or envy toward a certain Dharma friend or fellow spiritual practitioner. When I look closely, I realize I am actually feeling jealous of others. Only then can I recognize that this mindset is really unhealthy. If any of the 7 types of arrogance arise in my mind stream, generally speaking, if you don't recognize it and don't really pay attention, you just won't really know. Some people who are a bit less sharp feel even more that they are remarkable. They see themselves, they think all they do is right. But in reality, they still haven't recognized their own afflictions. Therefore, among the afflictions, arrogance and jealousy are truly very difficult to recognize. That's why we should very carefully examine our own mind stream in detail. Otherwise, you know, there is a saying in Tibet as well. For example, on the very peak of arrogance, the water of virtue cannot stay. Or, on the iron ball of arrogance, the sprouts of virtue cannot grow. There are various such sayings. If your mind stream is truly bound by arrogance, then the Dharma, such as that taught by a spiritual teacher, quite simply cannot benefit your mind stream in any way. It truly brings absolutely no benefit at all. For example, it's like wearing a raincoat. All the snow falling outside is simply completely blocked. Nectar sublime, Dharma falling outside, is so very entirely repelled by your inner arrogance. It is like a kind of defensive soldier. Whenever virtue tries to enter, each attempt is quickly met with resistance and is blocked one after another, so that virtue is never able to make its way through. It's impossible for any of it to get through. Therefore, it's best not to have arrogance in our mind stream. If you have arrogance, even when some Dharma teachers give excellent teachings, while listening to the teaching, you just feel this part is wrong, that part is wrong. Because your mind stream is filled with arrogance, especially if you're ignorant, you end up thinking that absolutely everything is somehow mistaken. Especially nowadays, there are some people who really like to pick faults with Buddhism. Recently, I've noticed that some young intellectuals from outside, because they went to a university and studied the subject of law in detail for several years, they only know one aspect, not the other. You could say they really have some knowledge of worldly matters, and they think, this is wrong, that is wrong. They are always nitpicking over words, constantly scrutinizing every little detail in what others say, or finding... But in fact, these so-called faults are just problems within their own minds. They have no understanding of the profound content of Buddhism out in the world. They just assume they are right. So many of the questions they raise seem quite laughable. They think that this Dharma teacher is wrong, that Lama is incorrect, things certain, but in reality they aren't well versed in. And for certain worldly logic, especially the methods of reasoning in Buddhist logic, Hetuvidya, in Tibetan Buddhism, they have no understanding. He thinks that everything people say, no matter what it is, like Buddhist logic, Hetuvidya, which avoids the three major faults when defining characteristics: under-pervasion, over-pervasion, and non-pervasion. Such people are among the professors of any university. None of what they say is completely free from these three major faults. There simply aren't people who can define every concept perfectly in this way. When we were compiling a dictionary in Chengdu, some university professors who had never studied Buddhist logic were especially troubled when it came to explaining each term. When explaining terms, you don't need to eliminate these faults of over-pervasion or under-pervasion. They feel that if you explain a term in this way, which other terms would this explanation also apply to? As long as we describe the concept from the main perspective and its essence, that's already more than sufficient for what we need. It's truly enough. This is also the requirement in Hetuvidya and logic. But nowadays, some people sometimes, after learning just a little bit and without really taking the time to fully understand it, like a half-full cup that makes a lot of noise when shaken. Sometimes you may notice that, in fact, truly arrogant people are actually the most pitiable when studying Buddhism. What kind of merits does the master have, or how properly the teaching is given? They always feel that teacher can't explain or teacher making mistakes. Sometimes the teacher can't explain things well on the surface, but that's another matter. When it comes to those who truly possess the qualities of Dharma, he himself really couldn't say anything at that moment. So he truly had to carefully explain some important Buddhist principles. It's honestly quite laughable. Sometimes they have no realization or attainment in their hearts, nor have they thoroughly studied any scriptures or texts. As a result, they simply can't explain any of the principles at all themselves. Indeed, as we can all observe, such undeniably arrogant people do exist in today's society, and therefore we must always be vigilant, especially during the process of listening to the Dharma. If arrogance arises in your own mind stream, you must immediately correct your behavior and mindset. If you don't correct yourself, no matter how extraordinary the Dharma is, in the end, your own mind stream will not benefit from it. Since ancient times, many eminent monks and great masters have indeed been extremely humble. I have read biographies of Mipham Rinpoche and Longchen Rabjim. The teachers relied on, some of them definitely did not possess greater wisdom than Mipham Rinpoche, because we have also read some treatises written by their teachers. Mipham Rinpoche is a nation of Manjushri Bodhisattva. And he can definitely find some mistakes in the wizard. But he never did, always respecting the Dharma, out of deep respect for Buddhism and also out of respect for the teachers. Since he held a heart of true respect within him, the teachings given by those teachers definitely brought tremendous, significant and lasting benefit to his own mind, without question, without a doubt. Some time ago, there were a few individuals in our institute. I heard that when a teacher made a mispronunciation, people criticized right away. Later, I also severely criticized those individuals personally. I said, if you act like this, you shouldn't stay in institute. Maybe the teacher did mispronounce one or two characters, but that's not really important. Your attitude of opposing the teacher is actually quite severe, and it shows ignorance of conduct in listening to the Dharma. If you continue like this, the teachings from teachers will not benefit your mind stream. Some arrogant people, for example, those who have attended higher education institutions, these people always tend to look down on others deep in their hearts. But when it comes to truly expounding knowledge yourself, at that time, in fact, it's actually quite rather pitiable and genuinely unfortunate, to be honest. Therefore, everyone must make sure to destroy the arrogance within their own mind stream. Otherwise, as has happened before, even when we were, in fact, selecting teachers, what I focus on most is first to observe this teacher to see whether he himself is very arrogant. If he's highly arrogant, then once he becomes a teacher, he will feel as if all the disciples and everyone else are simply beneath his notice. That's why, as we can see, arrogance is, in fact, often considered indeed the ultimate source of many faults. Therefore, in the past, when I selected some teachers, I first checked if this person was arrogant. If someone is very arrogant, even if you have some level of Buddhist knowledge or worldly skills, arrogance will make you unable to see any virtues in others. If you can't see the good qualities in others, then you definitely can't have a mind that benefits others. So we still try our best to choose those who are more humble and honest. Even if your academic achievements are not particularly high, but your character is excellent, such a Dharma teacher is beneficial to sentient beings. Their personal discipline is also very pure. Moreover, it is necessary to engage in long-term study, contemplation, and practice, as well as promote the Dharma. This was also the principle of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok. Every time when selecting Dharma teachers and Khenpos, during the discussion, the Guru would often say, this person still seems to be quite arrogant. If someone is quite arrogant, then let's put it aside for now. There were often such teachings. So no matter how much merit or knowledge one has, generally speaking, as one's knowledge gradually increases, it is often observed that their genuine respect and heartfelt reverence for others also gradually become even stronger. Of course, there are indeed some fools for whom this may not be the case. A wise one need not be arrogant. For someone without wisdom, arrogance is useless anyway. Mipham Rinpoche also said, why should a great being be arrogant? Without arrogance, one is even more dignified. What use is arrogance to an inferior person? For some great beings and wise people, arrogance is unnecessary. They are truly remarkable people. Even without arrogance, they possess merit. It is even better if they are really not arrogant. As for inferior peoples without wisdom or genuine spiritual practice, their arrogance is just something others might laugh at. It serves no other purpose. Therefore, we should strive to eliminate, as much as possible, any arrogance from our hearts whenever we possibly can. Today, I should abandon arrogance and willingly serve all sentient beings as their servant. This is what treatises teach. We should dispel all forms of arrogance and pride from our hearts, and willingly, with humility and an open heart, be the dedicated servant of all sentient beings. If, because of ourselves, whether in worldly or spiritual matters, we possess some merit in certain aspects, and we start to think we are remarkable, becoming attached, then we will fail to see the faults in our own mind, and we will also be unable to recognize the virtues of others. Therefore, we should eliminate arrogance and always remain humble and cautious. Explained clearly. For example, in terms of worldly matters, if I've attended university, or if I have expertise or specialized knowledge in certain fields, or if I possess talent, wealth, or various other merits, some people, when they have even a little merit in these areas, feel proud and show off in front of others. In terms of spiritual matters, after spending a long time studying, reflecting, and practicing, when they achieve merit in some areas, they start to think, I am really remarkable now. I am a great Dharma teacher. I stayed in the institute and studied esoteric teachings, or I'm a lay practitioner and different from others. Now, I have reached a certain level. Even all kinds of arrogance can sometimes arise. At this time, you simply won't be able to truly see or notice the virtues of others, nor will you be able to recognize your own faults. In the end, this leads to the teachings you receive from any teacher, bringing no benefit to your mind stream, and all virtues being unable to enter your continuum. Therefore, each of us should truly examine carefully whether we have arrogance or not. Arrogance is hard to detect. If some Dharma friends around us, if you find out, you can tell me. You may think you are doing very well, but others might say you have a strong sense of arrogance. You should pay attention whether it's in your speech or in your usual mindset. You should be mindful of yourself. It's appropriate those around you give you a reminder, because an arrogant person is unable to see themselves. In the past, there was a monk in our monastery. Everyone said he was arrogant, but if he was, is unclear. When there was a Dharma assembly, he would put on rather beautiful, elegant clothes. Even when just sitting for long periods of time, he would always, without fail, still absolutely have a posture that many people found hard to accept. But he himself didn't notice. He just thought his clothes looked great and dignified. He saw it that way. So for many people, arrogance is actually really hard to completely get rid of. Even if you just wear a nice outfit, you might feel before many out of everyone here today, look, I am the best looking. It could be like that. Letter to a friend, pride and arrogance distinguished. But here, they are not separated in such detail. In short, when we listen to the Dharma, we should hope not to have an arrogant mind in front of any Dharma teacher. Otherwise, no matter how many teachings this teacher gives you, it has no meaning to your mental continuum. If you are not arrogant, let's think about it, like Tsongkhapa and Mipham Rinpoche, as well as those eminent monks and masters in Han Buddhism, whenever they listen to teachings in front of others, we can imagine that these teachers must have had all sorts of situations, circumstances, and experiences in their careers. But the teachings from their lineage masters were always deeply and profoundly beneficial to their own mind streams in many ways. Personally, in the process of relying on my own teachers, sometimes I feel this teacher is amazing, such eloquent and wise people. I admire them. But sometimes it might not appear that way on the surface. There was once a Khenpo Gaba who also went to Sershul together with the Dharma King, the wish-fulfilling jewel. Once, when listening to the teaching on the 3 vows, the verses were placed on top and the commentary was placed below. He would read the verses, then read the commentary to me. At first, I thought these verses, because I was sure if I read them once, I could explain them without needing to do it this way. But later I realized sometimes people drop arrogance. I was honestly really disrespectful in front of my teacher like this. The teacher had studied and contemplated for years, and speaking to me like this was also a kind of expression. So I made a conscious effort to listen very carefully, making sure to approach the conversation with a truly sincere and respectful attitude and to give my full attention to what was being said. Later on, I listened to a lot of teachings, not just this one. Others might think that I am arrogant, but I feel that during listening to the Dharma in front of any teacher, even though when they teach, it's basically something outside of my own ideas, something I couldn't express myself, whether it's lineage or other. Listening to Dharma gives blessing. I heard many teachings. If it were someone else, after hearing the first class, they might think they're similar, can't explain much. I won't listen next time. Maybe there will be something like this. For me, because in relying on my teachers, perhaps the causes and conditions in many aspects have been relatively favorable. Later on, no matter which teacher I relied on, in my heart, deep down inside, I always felt somehow that no matter which Dharma teacher, I always had great respect for them. Because for the human world, the Dharma is extremely rare and precious. Any guru, any Dharma instructor always offers their teachings with deep compassion. So we should show them the utmost respect. That is right. Otherwise, if you have just a bit of knowledge yourself, for example, if I am considered young now, my teacher will probably eventually become elderly. Seemingly, they appear muddled or confused. At that time, if the disciple stands up, I criticize him almost every single day. Maybe he just can't really say anything back. People need a deep and abiding long-term sense of respect for the Dharma and for our teachers. Strive to eliminate the arrogance within one's own mind stream. Only in this way can any mage truly the benefit to you in the Dharma will quite naturally be received as it is meant to be. Next, it talks about the concept of lack of right faith. Lack of right faith means that if you do not possess faith, especially the kind of faith that is regarded as correct or true, you are missing an essential. You have already blocked yourself from entering the door of the true Dharma. Therefore, you must possess the unwavering faith among the four types of faith. Next, the second stain in seeking the Dharma is the lack of faith. Because if you do not have sufficient faith in the Buddha Dharma and your teacher, then the door to entering the true and genuine Dharma is already completely and thoroughly blocked. At that point, there is truly nothing you can do. Therefore, first and foremost, when seeking the Dharma, you must have a kind of faith. Of course, actually, there are four types of faith. They are pure faith, aspiring faith, confident faith, and unwavering faith. Pure faith is something everyone is familiar with. Sometimes when you occasionally go to a Buddhist hall or hear people chanting the Buddha's name, your heart feels especially joyful, though you don't know why. Some lay practitioners, as they start chanting Great Liberation Prayer, name of Amitabha Buddha, they can't help but shed tears. In fact, they're experiencing the arising of pure faith. They themselves don't know the reason either, but they feel comfortable and closeness in their hearts. They just keep crying. This is a kind of pure faith. This kind of faith is easy to lose, because you move by sounds or you cry seeing Buddha statues. But after a while, for no reason, if someone says this Buddha statue isn't good or this chanting isn't proper or something like that, you will immediately change your mind. This kind of faith is not very reliable. Faith based on desire for happiness. Through listening to teachings or reading books, one comes to see the merits and faults, then develops faith in the three jewels. Better shows understanding. After reading a master's biography, you feel this master impresses, seeing how vast his activities are and spreading, and how he has an especially strong compassion for all beings. You immediately develop faith in him. This better than previous, but still fades. Because things like his biography or other means can also change one's faith. Then as for faith, based on conviction, this is faith that arises in the heart. You could say it arises from deep within one's mind. Faith in the three jewels, Four Noble Truths, or karma. After some listening and contemplation, one truly develops a strong faith in these things from the heart, a kind of faith deep in one's heart. This kind of faith is indeed actually also a form of aspiration. Also said in the Enlightenment Treatise, the Buddha said, root of all virtue is faith, understanding. The Buddha taught the foundation of virtuous dharmas needs faith, understanding. Without faith or understanding, you cannot truly grasp their essence. Actually, even this kind of faith can still change. It can still be altered. So the highest form of faith means unwavering faith. So what is unwavering faith? For example, after studying and contemplating for over 20 years or more than a decade, you develop an extremely firm faith in Shakyamuni Buddha, a faith that is forever unshakable and absolutely steadfast. Such faith is called unwavering faith, and this is the most important. Our faith in the Dharma shouldn't be because someone else says this is good. Yes, I'll go listen for a couple of days too. Or someone says a certain master is remarkable, and after hearing this person's promotion, go listen to him for a bit. This faith is unreliable. But if you yourself, over and over again, spend more than a decade, even 20 years, whether on the Dharma, on our teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, or any master, and think, no matter what others say, I already fully understand this is the object of my refuge, and his qualities are truly inconceivable, and in your own heart you truly have an unshakable faith. This is called unwavering faith, and it is extremely important. We also really hope that some time ago, when I was teaching the praise of the Supreme Deity, I also said that everyone should have a truly unwavering faith, a steadfast confidence in the Dharma. This is very important. This afternoon, Khenpo Norba and I were chatting, and we said, we don't claim realization, but there is faith in the Dharma and in teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. I think it can be said this way. At least that's how I feel. People age. In fact, it seems that in the whole world, the only true refuge is the Buddha and the Dharma. Apart from this, everything else is just temporary in the end. merely an illusion, like a dream or mirage in reality. None of it is reliable. Any kind of wealth, fame, or social status in the world, as well as many kinds of emotions, all sorts of relationships, and various matters, all seem on the surface to be like a beautiful dream, very attractive or truly extraordinary. But when you really rely on it or observe it in practice, they have no real meaning. The only thing in this world is to do our best to uphold the Dharma. So I believe that my faith in the Dharma will definitely not waver in this lifetime. If there is even a slight opportunity or a small condition, listening to Dharma teachings, I feel among everything I have done, this is the most unsurpassed. I am like this, and I hope those who listen to the teachings will develop unique faith in the Dharma in the future, especially an unwavering faith. This is any kind of adversity or blow that you might encounter. Your continuity will not change. Otherwise, some other kinds of faith are very easily changed. Today, you may have great faith in Tibetan Buddhism, but after a while, when a Christian says, your Buddhism may not be that great, our religion is such and such, you say, yes, from today on, I'll join your group. You just leave all your Dharma texts behind and simply follow them over there. This means your faith is not stable. Back when you first entered the Buddhist path, you cried a long time. When you join an outside path or another religion, you still have the same tears. So these people are still very, very pitiable, truly pitiable indeed. We have always truly felt that in our view, a person's faith must be stable. Now, this is absolutely, truly, and very important. So when you are listening to the Dharma, you must have faith. Without faith, listening to teachings is illogical. You can see it in people's faces when hearing the Dharma, have truly devoted eyes toward the Dharma and the Dharma teacher. You could say they have faith. With joyful anticipation in their hearts, they listen attentively. Some people, however, are just quietly passing the time in the midst of the crowd of Dharma listeners. They keep waiting for the class to end, always waiting. Their only hope is to have a good meal after the class is over. Other than that, they may not have any other goals at this time. This simply shows a lack of faith. Next, the third point, in other words, not seeking the Dharma. Aspiring for the true Dharma can be said to be the foundation of all virtues. There are 3 levels: superior, middling, and inferior in seeking the Dharma. So practitioners are also divided into superior, middling, and inferior categories. Here it says, aspiring for the Buddha's teachings is actually the root of all virtues. If we have a deep and sincere sense of longing for the Dharma, if we sincerely wish to attain the profound teachings of the Dharma and truly feel deeply inspired by it in our hearts and minds, then if you happen to have a truly superior aspiration, the Dharma you obtain will be of the highest quality and you will become a superior practitioner. If you have a middling level of aspiration and respect, then you will simply become a middling practitioner. If your aspiration or your faith, whether it is in your heart or in your mind, is truly of the very lowest possible level, you will ultimately become an inferior practitioner. If you have no aspiration at all and feel indifferent toward the Dharma, then the realization you attain will also be basically non-existent. You simply cannot become a practitioner. People are same. Some people are very successful in their careers, and in fact, they are absolutely full of confidence in their work, without a doubt. It's the same in worldly matters, whether you're doing business. If you have no interest at all in your own career or projects, then for no reason, it's simply impossible for much success to just appear in your life. Therefore, whether it's worldly or spiritual matters, a person's perseverance and aspiration are indeed still very important, absolutely essential. If you have never had any longing or aspiration for the true Dharma, then of course there is simply, truly, and absolutely no way to talk about attaining the true Dharma. If you don't even have the slightest bit of aspiration, then there absolutely, truly won't be any real sense of accomplishment. Because you don't even truly have faith in Buddhism, how could you possibly ever hope to achieve anything? Is absolutely impossible. As someone who has chosen the monastic path, it is especially important that you cultivate and maintain a sincere and unwavering aspiration for... Now, in this age of degenerate Dharma, the main responsibility for Buddhism originally lies with the monastics. Sometimes in this age of Dharma's decline, very few monastics, and some appear to have what seems to be a significantly diminished faith in the Dharma, perhaps for now, at this moment. If this continues truly and wholeheartedly becoming the inheritors and true successors of the Tathagata's profound and enduring spiritual legacy for generations to come, there are very, very great difficulties indeed. I remember that in the Jewel Treasury Treatise, a quote from the Vinaya Sutra is cited, which says that as a monastic, if you do not see through worldly matters and do not aspire to the Dharma and liberation, then even if you have shaved your head and beard, you are neither considered a true monastic nor a layperson. Because if you are placed among lay people, for example, you lack the desire for worldly things that lay people have. You have no genuine interest in family or in many other worldly endeavors either at this time, currently. If you are placed among monastics, you lack aspiration for freedom and intention to benefit sentient beings. Such people are neither one thing nor the other. They are neither monastics nor lay people. This is the perspective of the Vinaya Sutra. So nowadays, in the world today, there are indeed a few genuine monastic practitioners like this. Perhaps in the secular world, some people fail in their careers, to put it quite bluntly. They really have no future prospects at all. So as a result, they end up shaving their heads. But even among monastics, they are not truly the real practitioners. There are such cases among monastics, and there are also such people among lay practitioners. So I think when we study the Dharma, each of us must have a sense of aspiration. Since you have already taken refuge in the Dharma, you must have a deep and sincere longing for the Dharma. Only with this sense of longing can you achieve success. Just as a common saying in the world goes, as people say, the Dharma itself truly has no owner. Whoever is diligent and steadfastly persistent in their efforts will ultimately gain the most. The Buddha Dharma also has no owner by its very nature. Whoever is diligent and puts in sincere and consistent effort will attain it. In the same way, for example, if two Dharma friends, such as close companions, go together to attend a Buddhist institute, one of them is extremely diligent, studying day and night, forgetting to eat and sleep, studying, listening, contemplating, and practicing every day. Because of his diligence, his aspiration, and his respectful attitude, in the end, he achieves great accomplishments. But there is another person who's lazy and seeks comfort. He doesn't want to do anything, just idling away his time there, really. After a few years like this, he ultimately ends up gaining nothing at all. So the so-called Dharma truly has no real owner. This is for people like you, not for people like him, not divided that way. However, because people's diligence varies, the amount of Dharma they attain is indeed different. It's the same with academic degrees in the world today. For example, a doctoral degree. In fact, a degree is just a title, anyone can obtain it. But some people with wisdom, diligence, and aspiration through their own efforts eventually earn their doctoral cap. Some people are lazy and lack motivation. I am always here just passing the time in a rather dazed and somewhat muddled state. In the end, let alone a doctoral degree, even a proper graduation certificate, is very hard for some people to obtain. So there are also some very good teachings in worldly proverbs. Anyone can diligently realize Buddhism. However, for some people, due to circumstances, or it relates to the merit earned in past lives, whenever they encounter the Dharma, they become listless and lifeless. As soon as they hear about attending classes or the spirit of Mahayana Buddhism, they just can't muster any enthusiasm in their hearts. But when it comes to committing negative actions, or as I mentioned a couple of days ago, watching TV, playing mahjong, or in the cities, there are many illegal venues. As soon as they hear about these things, it appears that in fact their bodies all of a sudden have absolutely no ailments at all. But if you ask them to do full prostrations, they feel extremely tired, their legs go numb, and they can't stand up. But if you ask them to go dance in a nightclub, their bodies feel perfectly fine. They can dance for 2 or 3 hours without feeling any pain at all. Next day, they're full energy, go again. For some people, you could say this is the manifestation of karmic force. This really does happen. Therefore, we should have a deep and sincere sense of longing, a heartfelt yearning for the Dharma. Every Dharma friend should keep this in mind, because having a longing for the Dharma is also a form of diligence and vigor. Shakyamuni Buddha endured his own flesh cut out for 4 lines of true Dharma. He made 1,000 lamps from his body and inserted 1,000 wicks in them. He even leapt into a pit of fire and had thousands of iron nails driven into his body. He suffered countless hardships like these truly. He crossed mountains of blades and seas of fire, sacrificing his life to pursue the true Dharma. Put simply, in the biographies of our great master Shakyamuni Buddha during his previous lives, it becomes clear to us, without any doubt, that we are able to genuinely and truly observe and recognize this fact for ourselves. In the life stories of our great master Shakyamuni Buddha, there are many such accounts. Especially in the Lalita Vistara, there are some truly excellent and remarkable stories. It seems like this was also mentioned a couple of days ago. For example, at one time, Shakyamuni Buddha transformed into a king named Ganshenabala. At that time, he wished to obtain the true Dharma, but was unable to do so for a long time. So he made an official announcement throughout the entire kingdom, and eventually someone was willing to come forward and teach him. However, there were certain specific conditions or requirements. In fact, of course, there are various versions of the story. He was required to have 1,000 holes carved into his body and wicks inserted into each one. If he did this, the person said, then he would be carefully taught the Dharma. In the end, the king truly did have 1,000 holes carved into his body, let alone for just 4 lines of Dharma, even for an entire comprehensive teaching itself. Even having just 1 hole carved into your body would be unbearable. It's extremely, extremely difficult. But at that time, after the king had inserted 1,000 wicks into his body, he finally obtained it. Whatever is accumulated will eventually be exhausted. Whatever is high will eventually fall. Whatever is gathered will eventually disperse. And whatever is born will eventually die. This is a teaching on impermanence. On the surface, it seems very simple. Anything accumulated will eventually disperse. Anything that is high will eventually fall. And all living beings who are born will eventually die. In fact, it was for the sake of this principle that such ascetic practices were undertaken. Previously, at the Quanzhou Orphanage, Master Hongyi also spoke about this. He recounted stories, for example, from the Nirvana Sutra and the Sutra of Wise and Foolish. Both stories are about the Buddha seeking Dharma in his previous lives. One story tells of the Buddha when he was reborn as a poor man at that time, selling his own flesh just for himself in order to acquire for himself 5 gold coins, and then use this carefully in order to seek the Dharma. In the story from the Sutra of Wise and Foolish, the Buddha became a king, and for the sake of a single precious verse, he gradually turned his own body into 1,000 lamps in order to emphasize his unwavering, heartfelt devotion. Listen, receive Dharma with a Brahmin. After telling these 2 stories, Master Hongyi said at the time, it truly is really not easy for us to hear the Dharma in our lives. Now, we are very fortunate to have the opportunity to listen to the Dharma. It is truly a blessing. From now on, we must make every effort and practice virtuous deeds with even greater diligence. In Chinese Buddhism as well, stories from the Buddha's life are often used to illustrate just how very rare and precious it is to seek the Dharma. There are also several other interesting stories about the Buddha in which, for example, in the past, there was once a king named Zhang Langgeo. At that time, the Buddha also received 4 verses in front of a Brahmin, and likewise he offered his entire body for the sake of these 4 lines. All conditioned phenomena are impermanent. All contaminated things are suffering. All phenomena are without self. Nirvana is peace. For such a truly remarkable verse, he also offered his entire body. And at that time, when the Buddha was still on the path of training, there was a wise and just king named Brahma King who was known throughout the land. In front of a Brahmin manifested by Indra, he also happened to hear some valuable and important teachings. At that time, the king was in his palace, earnestly wishing to obtain the true Dharma of the Buddha. He never got it. Indra tested him as a Brahmin and stood at the palace gate saying, "I possess the Buddha's teachings. If you truly seek them, and only if you truly seek them, I can indeed grant them to you. But there is one important condition. You must carefully dig a pit that is 10 feet in depth. This pit must be completely and thoroughly filled with roaring flames every last corner. If you jump into this pit with unwavering resolve and make offerings to me amidst the fire, after you have made the offering, I can transmit the teachings to you." At that time, the king thought that it would be a great pity if he did not first obtain the Dharma. He asked the Brahmin to first transmit the Buddha's teachings to him. When teachings were shared, verses recited. One of the verses was, "Practice loving kindness to eliminate anger. With great compassion protect all beings, and let tears of compassion nourish life." This means one should cultivate a mind of compassion long-term and end anger in mind, and also use great compassion to protect all sentient beings. Let the gentle tears of great compassion softly nourish the hearts of all beings. That was roughly the overall meaning of the verse that was transmitted. After the transmission, the king truly did jump into the fire pit. He'd reached spiritual level. When he jumped into the fire pit, the entire pit turned into a lake of lotuses. There are also many similar stories of this kind. So these eminent monks and great masters of the past, truly for the sake of a single meaningful verse or even just a small insightful teaching, were still willing to give up everything. Many of the Dharma friends present here today really don't have to go through such hardships. You sit comfortably, your hearts are happy and at ease. There's no need for any ascetic practices. You feel that listening to the Dharma every day is very easy. But actually, this also brings about certain kinds of problems. Why is that? Because if we don't practice asceticism, we almost completely lack the true sense of just how precious it really is to seek the Dharma. So whether it's in our institute recently or among some people in the cities, their aspiration to seek the Dharma compared to the aspiration of the great masters and eminent monks of the past is less earnest than earlier people. I have read the biography of Master Nangai, and indeed, at that time, it was extremely difficult to listen to the Dharma. At that time, they went to Tibetan region twice. The first time they entered Tibetan to seek the Dharma, they went up from Kangding and Chamdo. When they set out, they carried all of their rations on their backs, along with some tents as well. Moreover, at that time, the Tibetan border guards were stationed there as well. If they were spotted at any time, there was always a risk of being imprisoned. During this time, they walked slowly while carrying their belongings on their backs. As a result, because they walked such long distances every single day, over and over again, in the end, all of their shoes were completely and utterly worn out. Especially in the cold winter, they walked barefoot in the snow. Their feet were damaged and many thorns pierced their soles. Normally, their feet were numb, so they didn't even notice. It was around noon when the weather warmed up a bit that they seemed to almost feel something pricking their feet. Then they would carefully pull the sharp thorns out and keep on quickly hurrying along the road, not stopping for anything. Sometimes they had to climb mountains, and the mountains were high. There are now Ker Mountain and Erlang Mountain. By car, it takes time through these mountains. Climbing them on foot was difficult. Every time they crossed a mountain, no matter how rugged or remote height was necessary for them to spend the night on it, sometimes it would snow heavily at night while they camped. All the tents would be heavily weighed down by the snow all around them. In the morning, they would struggle to move and very slowly get out. After carefully clearing away the snow, they would continue on their journey. Generally speaking, at night,
They would carefully remove their old, worn-out shoes and then gently use them as makeshift soft pillows to rest their heads. They didn't have anything else on their backs, no blankets or covers, absolutely nothing at all. At night, they would just use a single piece of clothing and maybe lay down a thin blanket if they had one, spending the night like that. It's cold in the mountains. So a few of them would all huddle closely together and sleep that way together throughout the entire night. And often, deep in the mountains, there were many places where you could hear the terrifying roars of wild beasts all around. At any moment, their lives were constantly in danger. Sometimes they had to cross rivers. Even the local cattle and horses were so cold that they didn't dare to cross. They had to cross scared. If they crossed the river with their shoes on, the shoes would immediately freeze, making it impossible to walk. So they had to take off all their shoes to cross the river. At that point, all the ice, stones, and sand would stick to their feet and freeze. When they finally reached the shore, it took them a long time to slowly get everything off. Sometimes their feet were already completely injured, yet they kept on traveling like this. Sometimes in those days, they walked step by step all the way to Lhasa. When they finally arrived in Lhasa, they said they felt a sense of real comfort, truly in their hearts. Nowadays, it actually takes us 7 days by car to get to Lhasa, and we already feel exhausted. Considering ancients' determination seeking the Dharma, we today really fall far short. Even just 20 years ago, our institute had no electricity and no roads. Back then, when we had just arrived, compared to those senior monks and great masters, we weren't worth mentioning. We didn't endure real hardship, but by comparison, if you compare us to people like you today, we actually did have it pretty tough in those years, including some Han monks who came later. During one winter for 3 or 4 months, they couldn't find a vegetable leaf. I often go to their home and they would eat some rice mixed with chili sauce. They practiced diligently day and night. Whether it was memorizing or reading, they were incredibly dedicated. Now, as living conditions keep improving, people become picky about everything. Nowadays, when it comes to food, if there are 3 dishes, 2 aren't enough, they'll ask you to cook another dish. Some people seem especially picky at times. I feel the great monks and virtuous masters of ancient times were not like this. Back then, their only true aspiration in their hearts was the Dharma. Even when it came to their own flesh and body, no matter the situation, they just went along with it without fuss. But now in big cities, many people have extremely high standards for everything. Actually, these things don't have much meaning. If you want to live in a luxury house, you have various needs for the facilities. You're busy fussing. Actually, when it comes to your eternity, even across lifetimes, when you leave this world, you simply can't ever take this house with you, not at all. But the Dharma you practice this is something you can take with you. So the Rajavavadaka Sutra also says, for the dying, the Dharma is their dwelling place, their refuge, their source of comfort. Truly, genuinely practicing the Dharma brings benefit to your continuum throughout all your lifetimes. But as for everything else, all the things that people do in this world right now, when the time comes when you leave your body behind in the human world, you can't take anything with you, not even a single thing in this world. For example, all the property of a country is owned by one person. At that moment, not even a needle or a thread could be taken along. That's why we must now develop the kind of faith that the great masters of the past had. Just like the story of King Ziguang that I told yesterday. They gave up their own lives and bodies, braving seas of fire and mountains of blades for the Dharma spirit. I'm afraid that for people like us today, this would be quite difficult. But so we should still recognize how rare and precious this is. Even if it's just a single line of Dharma or an entire teaching, if it is transmitted to your mind stream, on one hand, you should be deeply grateful to the Dharma teacher. If you try to measure the value of the Dharma with money or compare it to any other kind of value in any way, nothing can truly be superior to or surpass it. This is how we should think. If you feel longing within you, then listening, seeking, and practicing the Dharma will not be difficult. Otherwise, for example, I once met a lay practitioner in a city outside. He had his own car, and the place where the teachings were held was about 3 kilometers away. If he drove there, it would only take just a few short minutes, but he felt somehow deep down, oh, honestly, it's just not really worth it at all because it actually uses up so much gas. He felt there were many, many other reasons as well. He didn't say them directly because then others would know. Then I thought the great masters and accomplished practitioners of the past were not like this. Spending gas for 2 or 3 kilometers, or simply sending someone a message that costs just a few cents. Dharma's value is not like that. People in the world today are truly pitiable. If something is meaningless, not to mention 3 kilometers, 300, 3,000 kilometers might be willing to go. If a deal is 3,000 kilometers away, you could profit. Buy the place, you'll benefit. If it's something your descendants can enjoy endlessly, you might rush to catch a flight there, no matter how much it costs. But when it comes to the Dharma, you're not even willing to make the smallest effort. Sometimes the more I carefully observe people nowadays, the more pitiful and deeply sorrowful I feel about their situations. That's why we should read the biographies of the Buddha and the great masters in order to gain inspiration and understanding. Read them over and over again and then reflect on yourself. In fact, at first, they actually appeared just like ordinary people. Nothing seemed unusual at all. There was no difference between us, so are we. Through seeking the Dharma, they attained realization. If we also put in the same effort, we too can achieve corresponding accomplishments. We should think this way. Likewise, as followers, we should have a strong sense of aspiration in our lives. No matter how difficult or harsh the conditions, enduring severe cold or intense heat, we should still listen to the true Dharma. Even if it takes a long time, whether it's hot in summer or cold in winter, honestly, there's really just nothing at all to compare this to, for example, comparatively speaking, our academy now, compared to large urban cities, weather here is cold. Heard of practitioners, so cold, can't stand it, go back. After 3 winter months in Han, returning here for summer, actually with you going back and forth like this, your practice will encounter obstacles. There's no need for that. We can see some practitioners, if they stay in one place to listen, think their practice becomes complete and successful. But some people, after leaving once, don't come back for a long time. They return, sense it, think they're gone. The second time, they don't come back, or if so, they stay just 2 or 3 days, can't adapt, leave. Third time, they return, stay a day. By the 4th time, you never see them because they can't adapt. In today's life, once the mind becomes scattered, ordinary people are just like this. It's like when children skip school, they don't want to see their teacher. Ordinary folks aren't good. Once you see the outside world out there and spend some time with them, in the end, you feel that it's very joyful here. But over there, seeking the Dharma and attending classes feels exhausting, so you decide to leave that kind of restriction forever. This is my liberation. This is my freedom. It feels very joyful, but in reality, you're mistaking restriction for freedom. When we listen to the Dharma in the future, we should recognize that this is a very good opportunity. Opportunities aren't always available. So when you have this kind of chance in your life, you should really, truly cherish it. All right, we'll stop here today.
Bangarangara Bana Sagarda Bangarangara Bana Sada Bangarangara Bana Sagarda